So given everything else we've talked about with coaching, it's pretty clear that listening skills are actually going to be, kind of important in all of this. If we actually want to be able to frame people in the right cognitive perspective, reframe negativity, if we want to be able to set goals, if we want to be able to use our coaching mindset to elicit the person's inner drives, obviously, being able to listen is going to be a critical part of this. Now, of course, it goes beyond just sort of the caricatured active listening. You don't say. Oh, interesting. Wow. For that, if you want a course in that kind of just furrowed brow listening, you can, go watch somebody like Bill Moyers on PBS, who wonderful, wonderful interviewer. But it has been said of him in the past that he's made an entire career out of a furrowed brow. So if you just grunt a little bit, moan, and furrow your brow, okay, that will cover some of the basics. But there is actually a little more to the psychology of great listening than just furrowing your brow and walking around like, this all day long. So what are we going to do? All right, couple of pieces when we think about listening. Number one is, of course, whenever you listen to somebody, our FIRE model, which I'm not going to beat to death here, but our FIRE model is going to be important. Whenever you listen to what people are saying, you should always be listening in the context of the FIRE model. Are they talking about a fact now? Is that an interpretation they've made? Is that an emotional reaction? Is this some desired end? And the reason you want to kind of mentally cut up anything that anybody says to you, you don't always have to share it back to them in exactly this way, but the reason you want to listen to it this way is that it allows you to see where are there disconnects, where are there problems, where do I not have the whole story. So the more structure you have in your mind, the more you're going to be able to put that structure onto the conversation and really diagnose where the problems are. So as you know, from reframing, it's all about a disconnect between facts and interpretations. We may sometimes find out that we don't have the who, what, where, when, why, and how of the information. We don't have enough of the facts. So using this structure becomes critically important. Now, one of the other things we're going to be listening for is, do we have all of these pieces fleshed out? And especially, do we have the facts fleshed out? So you use the FIRE model just as a framework to help you dissect all of the information you're getting. Great listening requires a structure. Once we have that structure, then we can start to think about, do I have all of the information I might need? So when you're coaching somebody, when you're talking to them, you may find that there are unanswered questions. When we think about probing for information, there's all different ways to probe for information, which I'll cover in just a second. But the reason for probing is to make sure that we really are getting to the deepest possible level of information. So, for example, let's imagine we're listening to the facts, and the person we're coaching says to us, well, I had a conflict with Dr. Jones. Let's imagine it's a nurse, and we're talking about something that happened in their department. Well, I had a conflict with Dr. Jones last week. Oh, well, that's interesting. That's a fact, ostensibly. But I don't really have the who, what, when, where, why, how. I don't have much information fleshed out. So maybe I probe a little bit more. Say, well, what happened as a result of that conflict? Well, it was actually two conflicts, if I'm being totally honest here. We had this conflict, and after one of them, a medical error occurred. Interesting. I still am not sure I have this, what I'm thinking to myself. I'm still not sure I have all of the who, what, when, where, why, how fleshed out here. Is there anything else I'm missing? Well, maybe I'll probe a little more. I'm interested. You had these two conflicts with Dr. Jones, and as a result, the medical error occurred. I'm interested in wondering, anybody else have conflicts with Dr. Jones? Well, no, that's what was really weird is that nobody else really had a conflict with Dr. Jones. I'm the only one, and, he's been there for 10 years. Okay, now I feel like I'm getting a little bit more complete of a picture here. Now, the issue for us is really making sure that when we listen, not only do we use our structure to make sure that we're actually fleshing out what happened, because if we don't have the information, it's going to be hard for us to do a great job of coaching. And a lot of the time, we get sucked up in all of this. We get caught up in a wonderful story. But if we don't have the information, if we don't have the facts in particular, it's going to be difficult to kind of figure out, well, how do I best coach this person? Then, even when we do get the facts, we might find that it's incomplete. Our who, what, when, where, why, how is not completely fleshed out, and so we're going to have to work a little bit to do that. As I mentioned, there are lots of different ways to probe, but most probing questions fall under the category, one of four major categories. So if we draw this, we're going to have a factual category and an emotional category. We can probe that way, and we can also probe directly and indirectly. So let's talk a bit about these. Factual and direct probes are by far the easiest probing conversations to have. Factual and indirect, kind of medium difficulty. Emotional and direct, also kind of medium difficulty. The toughest kind of probing to do is emotional and indirect. That's going to be the hardest kind of probing that we're going to do. But again, we can cover each of these. So let's start with the factual and direct, the easiest kind of probing that we can do. Again, we're just trying to flesh out all of the pieces of information we don't presently have, so let's start with the easiest one. Okay, factual and direct probing basically means asking one of about 7 questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how, and there is one more. Relative rank. Okay, so a factual and direct probe basically means, well, who else was involved in that conversation you had? What was the topic? What did y'all talk about? When did this actually take place? Where was it? Was it at the office? Was it outside? Why did it happen that way, do you think? How did the conversation start? Any of these are all normal probes. And then relative rank is the question of, well, how did anybody else experience this? Relative rank, imagine you're interviewing a salesperson, and the salesperson says, you know what, every quarter I was at this company for 8 years, I made the President's Club. Whew, wow, that's a really impressive sounding thing, right? I made the President's Club. That sounds really great. Wow, awesome. How many salespeople were there? Oh, there were 1,200. Awesome. Just out of curiosity, how many of them made the President's Club? About 1,100. Huh. Okay, well, it's less impressive. Who, what, when, why, how, relative rank are really going to help you flesh out what information don't I have. So when you're coaching, it's very, very easy to get caught up in the I, the R, the E, the interpretations, the reactions that end, and skip past the fact that I don't have this stuff actually fleshed out for me. So even if you are the most advanced, psychologically astute listener, it is pretty important to make sure that some direct factual probes are going to be pretty important to help you kind of suss out which pieces of these facts am I actually missing. Now, we can also take this and go the direct route still and do the emotional direct route. The cliched question for the emotional and direct probe. This is the factual and direct probe. The emotional and direct probe is basically going to be, how did that make you feel? Now, this is, of course, a little bit cliched, so you can paraphrase this. Well, man, how'd you feel about that? Or what was your reaction when that happened? All of those are, just variations. What we're interested with The factual and direct probes are just a very simple. You don't have to make it like you're interrogating a hostile witness. I disagree that occurred. Your Honor, permission to treat the witness as hostile. You don't need to go down that path. But it's very simple. Who was involved? Where did it happen? When did the conversation? How did the whole conversation start? Did anybody else experience this? All very simple questions. How did you react to that? Well, that must have been something. How'd you feel about it after hearing that? Again, very simple, very pointed questions. Again, not interrogating a hostile witness, but just eliciting information. Now, we can also probe indirectly. We don't always have to do this in a direct, complete fashion. So, a direct kind of head-on sort of way. We can probe indirectly. So a factual indirect probe would be something like, let's say somebody says, I was working on a team. Oh, great. So you were working on a team. How did that go? We use a little direct probe. Oh, it was really good. Now, what we do, it was really good. What we're going to do is take what they just said and push it a little bit further. We're going to extend what they just said and intensify it to, in a gentle way, provoke a reaction. Now, how would this work? Okay, well, the team was really good. Oh, super. Really good, but perhaps not perfect? Well, no team is perfect. Oh, what made it not perfect? Oh, there were a little bit of conflict on the team, whatever. What we've done is whatever somebody says, we're just going to take that emotion, whatever that thing was, the adjective usually, it was really good, the descriptor, and we're going to intensify it. We're going to push it a little bit. Why? Because we want to see what happens if we extend that out. Now, we could just have asked them, so how did the team work? It was really good. Oh, well, tell me some details about it. Who was on the team? And where did the team meet? And how long did it last? We could do that. But sometimes using an indirect probing question gives us a little bit more information. Now, I mentioned the indirect probes tend to be harder than the direct probes. Why? Because you run a risk, a slight risk if you do it right, but you run a risk that by this provocation, it's a very gentle kind of provocation, but in the more dictionary sense of it, not like this connotation that it's, horrible and everything else, but provoking, we're just kind of pushing off where their comfort is. It was really good. Take that, push it just a little bit. Well, really good, but not perfect? Well, no, nobody's perfect. Now I have my opening, so now it'll often up some very direct, factual kind of probes. Oh, so what was not perfect about it? And now we're getting to a deeper heart of the issue. The indirect emotional probe works the exact same way, only instead of pushing this in a factual kind of way, we're going to push it in more of an emotional reaction kind of way. So the team was really good. Oh, now we're going to take that and add a little emotion to it. So the team was really good. And that made you feel excited, shocked, thrilled, disappointed. Well, I wasn't really disappointed. I mean, we could have done a little better. Oh, well, tell me what you could have done a little better. Well, no, I wasn't shocked. I mean, this ran like most of our teams had run. Oh, now we open up the opportunity. Well, tell me how this team compared to the best team you were ever on. Oh, well, the best team I was ever on. See, all we're doing is we're loosening up what this person has said to us. Now, oftentimes things like the team was really good get taken just as that's it, that's enough. But that's the equivalent of saying, yeah, Dr. Jones and I had a conflict last week. What are we missing? Well, we're missing that we could have done our indirect probe there. Oh, you and Dr. Jones had a conflict. You were, shocked by that? Well, a little bit. I was the only one who ever had any conflicts with him. We're missing these other layers of information underneath that. So you can just ask people questions directly. But sometimes, if you use them right, using an indirect probe will actually shake loose the answers they're giving you so that you can get to what's really underlying all of that. Now, this is not a course designed to teach you how to be a practicing clinical psychologist. It is, however, designed to give you some techniques for getting a little bit more information, for really hearing what's exactly going on with this person, so that when you hear this stuff, you have more information with which to be able to coach this person and ultimately help realize their full potential. That is the fundamental goal of this whole thing. You cannot coach a person and help them realize their full potential if we don't actually have all of the information available to us. Now, there is one final point with all of this, and that is we are not doing this to be judgmental. We are doing this to constructively help this person realize their full potential. We need whatever information we need in order to be able to do what we need to do. It is not about instantly, oh, well, you were really a jerk then to Dr. Jones, weren't you? It's not to find avenues to elicit this information. I got to say, these are fairly powerful tools. It's not a great idea to go walking around with weaponized listening and questioning techniques, and so we can find out people's weaknesses and, then smack them upside the head. It's not really what this is about. That's why I say, not only are these difficult, but you really have to use them in, some good conscience here. You have to keep your heart in the right place. When we use techniques like this, the whole point is to be able to listen to people so that we can surface the information and use it in a productive, constructive way. If you are hearing things that are not going to help you coach this person, let's say, for example, this person is just a motor mouth. They just ramble. It's every time you talk to them. It's just they're puking out information at you. Well, okay, if that's the case, this isn't really going to help you coach this person. You may actually need to dial back some of the information they're spewing at you. The whole point of this is to be constructive. So if you get to the point where you're hearing so much that is not relevant to what you're trying to help coach this person with, then you want to kind of dial back your questioning. De-intensify, basically. Slow it down. The questions, you maybe don't need as much information, and if they really are rambling, one technique that works really, really well when people are rambling is to take a piece of information they just said. Oh, well, I was working on this team, and let me tell you about this team. We used to meet together in New Orleans, and New Orleans, man, I'd never had a crawfish before. I used to pronounce it New Orleans, but then I learned it's Nolens. And man, it was just cool. I don't know, I was there one time right at Fat Tuesday, and right before Mardi Gras, oh my gosh, the parties, and the crawfish, the line's like a lobster. And okay, the person going on and on and on and on. What you want to do is take a piece of what they just said, paraphrase and redirect it. So, for example, the team used to meet on Fat Tuesday, and man, it was great, and we had these crawfish, and you jump in and you say, oh, so the team meetings, tell me about how they went. Or, it sounds like the team meetings were really fun. Tell me more about what was on the agenda there. You're going to take a piece of what they just said, paraphrase it, and then redirect the conversation. If you jump in and say, oh my gosh, I don't care about the crawfish. Believe it or not, I've had crawfish before. I don't care. Can we get back on topic? Well, now what you've just done is pop the person upside the head with a 2x4. And now the likelihood is they're going to shut down and not respond to your questioning anymore. Not the approach we want to take. What we want to do is, again, all of this is about using subtlety. There is an art to this. So work with it. So you want to take what they just said. Oh, well, the crawfish, sounds like you had some really exciting team meetings. Tell me about what was on the agenda for your last team meeting. We're just going to take what they said, interestedly, and use that now as a jumping off point to redirect the conversation back where we want it to go. So just remember, words are powerful, words count. You can do damage if you start probing and probing and probing to hurt people. We're not using it for that. We are using it to give us the information we need to effectively coach this person and ultimately help them realize their full potential.